evening, most of all, to members of the public, and thank you for coming out to your council chambers this evening. We have a special council meeting agenda that we're dealing with tonight. We have only one item on our agenda, and that is a public meeting. So we'll get started. First of all, I would like to ask you again, if you have a cellular device or any electronics, if you could set that to silent, that would be great. I want to welcome anybody who's joined us tonight as we do live stream our meetings as well, so thank you for coming. All public comments made during this meeting are both audio and video recorded and shall form part of the record, which will be retained in accordance with the town's retention bylaw. If you'd like more information about the town's retention bylaw, you can see the members of the clerk's office. Can everybody hear me okay? Getting nods? Great. All right, so the first item then is items 2.1, and that is the recommendation to approve tonight's agenda. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Van Berkel and Councillor Payne. All those in favor? That's carried. Next, I'd like to any member of council who has conflict of interest to disclose it at this time. Seeing none. Next, we'll go into item 4. So item 4.1 is the public meeting, and I will open this public meeting for tonight. Can I just ask, is there people here who've never been to a planning public meeting at town before? Okay, great. So I'm going to just try to lay out a little bit about what's happening, and if I get anything wrong, I'm sure one of our planners will be able to fill me in. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is for council to hear about and for the public to hear about a draft plan of subdivision amendment to the town's zoning bylaw. So once the town receives a complete application from an applicant, then we're the regulatory body, so staff will then get a copy of it. When they deem it complete, then it sets this process in motion that is a provincial process governed under the Planning Act. So we have then, once a complete application arrives at the town, we have certain steps that we have to follow, and we have to keep a certain timeline. The clock starts ticking once that application is received. So this public meeting is part of that overall process. So we're going to hear presentations both from town staff and then from the proponent's person that they've chosen to give the presentation. Then we're going to have time to hear from anyone who has questions or would like to make a comment. We're going to ask that you keep your questions or comments to about 5 minutes so that we can hear from everyone. And then if you have more to add, you can come back a second time after everybody's come once. And that makes sure at least everybody gets to at least have one thing to say. If the person before you has listed all of the concerns that you have, if you've got 5 concerns and the person in front of you has listed 4 of the 5, you don't have to repeat them all. You can just say his 4 plus this new one. And all that will be captured both by the clerk's office and by staff here at the town. The next step, once we've heard from everybody, council will then get a chance to ask their questions. Then we'll adjourn this meeting at the end of tonight, and staff will consider all that input they get from everyone, and it'll come back in the form of a report at a later date. If you want to be informed of when that later date is so that you can come back and see the staff report, read it on the internet, read it on the town website, and hear council to debate the decision, there's a book out there you can sign and leave your contact information, and then you will be notified when this is coming back for an actual decision versus tonight, which is all about gathering information. So I'm going to be reading from a script because the Planning Act is quite prescriptive and we have to follow certain rules. So if I sound like I'm reading from a script, it's because I am. But everybody will have time to have their say tonight. So the purpose of tonight's meeting is to inform council and the public, and also to obtain public input regarding a proposed draft plan of subdivision and amendment to the town's zoning bylaw number 80-13 under section 34 of the Planning Act, with no decisions being made this evening. The land affected is municipally known as 1291 Shore Acres Drive in the town of Innisfil. This evening, we'll hear from town staff and then from the applicant's representative. After they have spoken, any member of the public may come to the podium during the public consultation and will have 5 minutes to express their questions or concerns. Then staff will respond where possible. Should anyone need to speak for a second time to identify an issue that has not already been raised or to receive clarification, they may be allowed 5 more minutes at the podium. We'll now hear from the clerk on how the public notice of this meeting was provided.
Thank you, Your Worship. Notice for this public meeting was provided to required agencies and all landowners within 120 meters of the subject lands on October 31st, 2019. Notice was also provided in the Innisfil Journal and on the town website. Information on the development was also posted on the town's getinvolvedinnisfil.ca website for review and comment.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk. And has there been any correspondence received by the Clerk's Department concerning the proposed amendments?
Yes, Your Worship. Correspondence in opposition to the application has been received by the Clerk's office from Paul McGuckin, dated November 11, 2019, Brian and Francis Wicks, dated November 16, 2019, Ian Yorston, dated November 19, 2019, and from Angela Bodie, dated November 20th, 2019, and this will be recorded within the minutes.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Mr. Chris Cannon, Placemaker Planning, who will provide a summary of the planning context for this application. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Cannon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you to the public for coming out tonight. We look forward to your input, and we appreciate it as we move along with the processing of this application. The subject lands are located within the settlement area of Guilford on the south side of Shore Acres Drive and immediately east of the Metrolinx railway tracks. The subject lands are approximately 13.92 hectares in area with approximately 654 meters of frontage on Shore Acres Drive. This plan shows the location within the community of Guilford. The purpose of the application is a proposed draft plan of subdivision with 35 lots. 11 of the lots, the proposed lots, have frontage onto Shore Acres Drive. The remaining 24 lots have frontage and access from the internal public road. In addition, there are 2 environmental blocks, one in the northeast quadrant and one in the southeast quadrant, along with a stormwater management block and an open space block that's at the terminus of the internal public road. There's approximately a 5 meter wide, I don't believe it's quite 5, I think it's closer to 3 meter road widening across the frontage of Shore Acres Drive. The proposal includes an internal sidewalk as well as a sidewalk along the south side of Shore Acres Drive. The proposed lots will be serviced by town water and private septic systems. Here's an illustration of the proposed draft plan of subdivision. I believe most of you folks saw it across the hall. This is the proposed draft zoning bylaw Schedule A. It shows the residential lands that we just looked at that are going to be rezoned from agricultural general, proposed to be rezoned to residential 1 exemption. The woodlots will be rezoned environmental protection. The open spaces I mentioned at the end of the internal public road will be rezoned open space along with the stormwater management block. These are the studies that were submitted in support of the application. All these studies are listed on our website at Get Involved Innisfil, and if anyone would like to review any of these studies, obviously they're located there. This application will be reviewed in conjunction with the policy documents you see listed on the screen. Again, these are the folks that commented on the application. Lorna Atkins actually spoke to someone in customer service and indicated that she was going to be in attendance tonight. We received a late email this afternoon. Angela Robbie, or Bobby, I can't recall. But that'll be included in the record, and they will be notified of any correspondence or when we decide to bring this back for any modifications or decisions. Comments we've received to date from, we've received comments from the LSR, the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority. They're not in a position to support the proposed development at this time. There are multiple revisions that are required to the technical documents with regards to groundwater and stormwater management. So there's a lot to flush out with regard to that. And we're still awaiting comments from our internal staff with regards to traffic and other engineering works and other commenting agencies. Again, this application will be reviewed with regard to the policies found in these documents. And the next steps is staff will compile the comments we received at this meeting and along with the comments we received from internal and external agencies, internal staff and external agencies, that is. And staff will bring back the report on the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment for a decision once all issues and concerns are addressed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mr. Cannon. Next, we'll hear from Ms. Scotto from Weston Consulting, who is representing the applicant and will provide further details on the application. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and to Council and to the public for having me here this evening. My name is Sabrina Scotto. I'm the planning consultant on behalf of the applicant, and just want to provide a brief overview of the application and supplement the information that Chris has provided us with. This is the site here. I've provided a larger context photo, which I was looking at with many of the residents to try and determine where they live in adjacent to the property. The site, as it stands currently, is designated within the hamlet designation of the official plan, and a portion of it is also identified as key natural area, and that is the White Birch Creek portion of the lands. So you'll see in the northeast corner, the remainder of the lands is designated as hamlet within the official plan. The current zoning of the property as well within the town's documents is agricultural, again with the White Birch Creek portion being zoned EP, and we're proposing to maintain that zoning. As Chris already went over, this is our proposed zoning, again maintaining the designation within the creek area, as well as on the southwest corner, as well as the open space and then the residential lands as well. This is an overview of our development application. I won't go into too much detail unless there's any specific questions because it's already been reviewed. This mapping shows the environmental considerations of the property. So this is what we have based the rezoning of the lands on. So you'll see in the northeast and northwest corners, there are environmental considerations which are to be protected, and we have contemplated the protection and preservation of those areas, and that's based on the natural heritage evaluation that was completed as part of our background work on the applications. This mapping just shows a brief excerpt of what those boundaries are based on. This is just an overview of the previous application comments, most of which we have attempted to address. In terms of next steps and our planning analysis, as Chris mentioned, we have received comments from LSRCA. We are waiting for comments from other agencies and departments alike, and it will be our mandate to address and resolve those comments as well as the comments that we receive here today from Council and from the public as well. I'm here and happy to answer any questions that anyone from the public or that Council may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scotto. We will now hear from those who have questions regarding the proposed applications. We'll hear first from the public and then from council, and I would ask that each person come forward to the mics and addressing council, and please give us your name for the record. And if you can, these are tricky mics, you almost have to kiss them, so get up really close. Who's going to go first? Welcome, Ms. Atkins. Good to see you.
Hello, I'm Lorna Atkins, 1434 Thomas Drive, Guildford. I'll have 3 short points. The first one, our heritage. White pines are on this property, one in the center of the field, in the center of your road, and 3, maybe 4 at the tree line to the east. Our township was built on white pine. These should be preserved, and if you don't stay well away from the roots, like 30 and 50 feet, they'll be dead. We really need to take care of this, and it could be the keynote of your subdivision. We live at the Pines. The next point, you have a fair amount of parkland, protected land. It now is occupied by willows looking like this and like this. They need to be managed. Maybe 1 or 2 would be kept, but they need paths, open area, not 40 or 50 leaning willows. Drainage. I am directly behind Blaine Street. The exit pipe from the sump pump is 15 inches from the house. Other subdivisions in our area, the exit pipe from the sump pump goes through a perforated pipe right to the ditch. I know the town cannot tell a builder how to build, but it is really strange to see a mountain of ice right beside the house within 5 inches. It gets larger. I know you can't tell them how to do it, but it really looks bad when I see 21 houses that have to start after they buy the house to make the drainage right.
Ms. Atkins, just to clarify, so those comments are about a different subdivision that you're making, what was it called?
I know, but...
And we're happy to deal with concerns you have there, through customer service, and would ask that your comments tonight be about the subject lands in question. Thank you.
Thank you. Lake Simcoe Conservation will have something to say about stormwater drainage, and is it adequate for a unusual large rain? Thank you.
Thank you very much for those comments. Anyone else have questions or comments? Please, and if you know you've got something, maybe get up close to the mic, and we'll that way we can get through everybody more efficiently. Thank you, sir. Whenever you're ready.
Yeah, my name's David Jakes. I live at 1296 Shore Acres Drive, Guildford. Basically directly across the street from proposed development. Some of my concerns, initially we received a letter in the mail regarding the first phase of this development. I have a copy of it in my hand. It included 25 homes. That was increased to 35 homes. I don't know if council's aware of this. That's one concern. Another concern that we have is the storm water management. Exactly how this is going to work with runoff, drainage, etc. Also wondering if existing residents will require some sort of different type of insurance to protect their homes against any type of flooding or any potential changes that may happen regarding the development. Also, a concern is the road itself. Wondering about the widening of the road and snow removal, things such as that. I know that it's already a very busy road. We're a pretty, outdoorsy community. The lake on the south end of Guilford freezes first. Most people come fishing on our road first. Also, Guilford Road, the access to the lake has been blocked off. So now the real only access to the lake is at the bottom of Shore Acres Drive. And we live on a busy road. It's really busy. People park often off to the side so that they can enjoy the lake and whatnot. I think this is really going to cause a problem in the future based on the fact that, there's not really anywhere to park. Another concern is parkland. I'm 36 years old. I've lived in Guilford my whole life. We have one small park, and we've had a lot of houses built. I think around 70, 80 homes, including this development in the last 10 years or so. It doesn't seem that there's any parks for nearby or large parks where, people can play sports or do something other than play in a swing set, which is basically the setup that we have on the small park that exists in Guilford now. Also, we're concerned with the length of the driveways. If you look on Guilford Road, a bunch of homes were built there 5-6 years back, and the homes basically sit right on top of the road. The driveways are tiny, 2 to 4 cars at the most, and that's, another concern with snow removal and, the distance from one house where I live. I have a 12-car driveway, and so do most of the people have long driveways on the north side of Shore Acres, as well as the new homes that were built down the road within the last 4 to 5 years. They have long driveways. Their houses are well set back, Based on what I've seen in the drawing, it doesn't look like there's much room for driveway pathways, for people that are going to live there. As for anything else, that's kind of my major concerns now. If anybody else wants to go ahead, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jakes. I'm just going to ask a question, if I could, to the planner. So do you want to clear up the issue with the first application with the 25 versus this application? Do you have information about that?
Yes, Madam Mayor. The previous landowner had an application that was submitted for 25 lots. Our planning department issued a letter of complete application that was circulated to the residents within 120 meters to allow them a little bit of a heads up on a review of the complete application. We didn't set a public meeting at that time because the ownership ended up changing. The new owner has proposed 35 lots, and they had to submit a reasonable use assessment to ensure that the soil conditions had the capacity to handle the drainage and the septic system. So that's something that's still under review right now with the Conservation Authority and our engineering department to decipher whether or not 35 units is actually something that we'll be able to consider. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
It's Ian Yorston, 1258 Shore Acres. I did send in an email earlier, and my understanding is the points noted will form part of this discussion tonight. I just wanted to add some comments to what David had mentioned. There's several homes that are currently slated, would be slated right across from this new subdivision entrance egress. That is a concern for us, obviously. light pollution, et cetera, and just even on the radius of the road for turning of vehicles. It has been suggested that this entrance exit be moved across from the golf course. I've already had discussions with the owner of the golf course. This seems to be a reasonable decision and a design change, so I'd like to get that recorded. In regards to parkland, I know this was already noted, the lack of, and there's one lot that seems to be sectioned off for the others. Noted as a lame duck in another email, but we're wondering that would be beside your stormwater management system. Ponding, maybe that could be designated a parkland. Maybe there could be a consideration for a throughway or a through put from Shore Acres through to Guilford Road as a connection through to the park from both sides. That could be a design consideration. It was already mentioned before in regards to, there's a traffic study by Nextran that was done in 2016. And it really focuses, what I could read from it, it focuses on traffic from Monday to Friday. To be honest, the traffic crunches on the weekends, especially the new dock install at the bottom of the road has brought further traffic. And I did applaud the adding of the lot there to take some of the parking, but people still don't want to pay $10, unfortunately, are still parking up and down the streets. And the traffic's increased considerably. So there was it creates a concern in regards to the widening of the road, the snow removal, which has already been noted, and the setbacks of the other houses and how that's going to be managed. Since the traffic study was 216 and doesn't take into account the 219 changes, and it simulates off of 216, we're wondering if a new traffic study should be completed and also include the weekend traffic. I think some of the drainage items have come up. I know there were some other folks in the pre-meeting talking that had a lot more detail on the history of the area, but I've noticed that, and I've only been there 5 years, and we've noticed flooding at the top of the 20th Road. So I have a real concern with how all of this water and collection is going to be changed, diverted, with the 3 ways mentioned prior. I have now flooding that I have now in my basement that I've seen, so I'm hoping that this development would address all the issues with, however, drainage, et cetera. And I'm not sure what protections are in place if the sump or the collection pond overflows. I know there was a discussion of diverting water east, west, 3 ways of diversion, but I'm not sure, I'm not clear on that plan, so that I would like that to be reviewed also. That's it, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yorson. Welcome, sir.
Good evening. My name is Alan Corbett. I'm at 1240 Guilford Road. I have a couple of concerns. One is the environmentally protected area, which I back onto. And not to speak for myself, but we have a miniature bird sanctuary there that has pileated woodpeckers in it, has for years, red cardinals, numerous types of chickadees, robins, doves. I'm just hoping, in what I've seen in 30 years living in Guilford, that there won't be changes that goes along, that some of this environmental stuff might be taken away. There's a fox den in there. We have foxes that are born in there every spring. They come in through. I see them roaming around at night when I go out to work. They're great for the neighborhood to keep things clean. It would be a shame to see some of the things that happened just below us in the other Neely development that took place, where there was to be a park and it didn't end up a park. There was to be an area at the bottom to retain water. It was never put in. Quite frankly, the end of Guilford Road for drainage, I worked in underground, is a potential for a nightmare for the water not to escape on the south or north side of Guilford Road, and the same problems are on Lakeshore. We haven't had a flash flood since '99, where we had approximately 3 to 4 inches of water running over the top of Guilford Road, which flooded most of the lower part of Guilford. With all these new homes coming in, excuse me, if the drainage isn't addressed, and there's a problem now with the new homes that we back onto with the environmental, the way the water drains, a lot of people don't realize about the old artesian wells that have been in Guilford for years. I knew a lot of the old boys that were around, including Sam Neely, that owned the property for many years. We called him the mayor. In saying that, it's been brought up 2 or 3 times, but it really needs to be addressed. Not to mention, if it happens again with more of the residents that are full-time in the older cottages, they're all old surface wells. They're all septic. If they flood, we're talking about massive contamination, not only to the homes, but to the lake. It's a major concern. And I really don't want, it's a major concern to see this environmental bird sanctuary behind us for all of us in Guilford to be protected, because we really have a rare amount of special birds in there. So those would be some of my major concerns tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crumpet. I can tell you I had the opportunity to have a good chat with Sam on Friday, the former mayor of Guilford, and he's still going strong. Oh, sorry, Mr. Corbett. Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening. My name's Pat Neely, not son of Sam. Sorry, bad reference there. But anyway, Sam's nephew. Anyway, my address is 1314 Guilford Road. And needless to say, my family's had quite a run in Guilford. But anyway, I'm going to just tie back into the drainage, sort of. But I'm more concerned about if the property development in my backyard, if they're going to be actually elevating that property, and if so, how much. It was explained to me prior to this meeting just how that was planned. They were planning on draining that, but my concern is if they change the grade or elevate, we already have flooding issues, but again, I'm more concerned about how much they're actually going to lift it. So, and everything else that has been touched on, so that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Neely. Ms. Scotto, do you have any comments about the elevation? Is there, do you have grading? Have you got to that stage yet? Or did you want to just quickly answer that question about the...
So we have gone through preliminary grading, and I was speaking with the gentleman earlier. In terms of the elevations, we have analyzed your lot is over on, oh, I don't know where you're sitting now. There we go. Your backyard backs onto the development, and so his concern is primarily with how the rear yards of our proposed lots will interface with the edge of his backyard and the drainage in that area. So it will be slightly elevated, I was just reviewing, based on the current grades, but the overall drainage area that's currently draining to that to the south property line. Right now, as it currently exists, there's about 9 hectares of the subject property that drains into his backyard and all of the backyards with the lots that front onto Guilford. Through the revised application, that'll be significantly reduced to about 1.5 hectares of land that drains to that swale along the south property line. So it'll be significantly reduced, and we hope that that'll improve the condition with the revised grading as well as the revised drainage patterns.
Thank you. Next. Welcome.
Hi there. Hi there, my name is Giuseppe Ingolia. I live at 1288 Shore Acres Drive, corner of the golf course parking lot there. And I only have 2 concerns. One of them is the setbacks of the homes for larger driveways. We don't want them the same as on Guilford Road, where the setbacks weren't very much. We think you should maintain the larger driveways. And number 2 is the parkland. I understand that they have proposed parkland dedication there, but we would prefer something where in that parkland dedication that they're proposing, we can't put any structures. So I think there should be something dedicated for something where we could put some structures for children, proper park in Guildford. And I see there is one spot where another gentleman said in the corner where the selling pond is, maybe that corner could be all right. And if they move the road, maybe they could just downsize the amount of lots a little bit and make the parker a little bit larger in that corner. And that's everything. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else has question, comments? Please, thank you. Welcome.
Hi, Catherine Clofer, 1252 Shore Acres Drive, which I believe is right across the street from where the road is supposed to come out. So at nighttime, we're going to probably have lights in our dining room, living room window. All of the things that everybody has brought to the attention, we agree with, my husband and I. And I just wanted on the record that we also sent an email to Mr. Cannon that was not on the record. So it was just today, so maybe you just didn't have a chance to look at it. So I just wanted that on the record, but thanks.
Thanks very much. And Mr. Cannon, can you just assure when you get back to your computer, I know it's been a busy day, that you did receive that email and just confirm that we did have that for the record? Thank you. Other questions or comments?
My apologies, if one more question, and this may not be as much for the group to the right. It's in regard to electrical servicing proposed for the density of the 35 homes. We're curious if a transformer stations are going in, or is this too early, maybe at this phase, to be looking at electrical support? Is this run on poles? Is this underground? Et cetera, and loading on the systems. I know that's maybe too far of a question, but it is a question that I'm wondering if it'll be looked at sooner than later.
There's no one here from InPower this evening, but Mr. Scarrett, did you have an answer to that?
Through your worship, to help address the comment about the power availability, there's no proposed power station under this, but please ensure that this plan will be circulated to InPower for comments. To date, we have not received any of those comments yet, as we're just gathering information for this public meeting, but they will be circulated and encouraged to comment if necessary on the availability of the power.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name is Giuseppe Ingoli again, 1288 Shore Acres. So I wanted to bring up the traffic study again. So the proposed homes that they're going to bring in, I'm thinking there's going to probably be at least 3 cars per home, because a lot of people move in with their in-laws and they are going to be larger homes. So you're going to probably have 110 more vehicles traveling that road. And with the other homes that have been built, I know when there's a 4-way stop there at Shore Acres, maybe we could propose a set of lights being put up in there to control the more traffic scenario. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sorry, I just have one more thing to add. It is back to do with drainage, but being in the water main game for many years when I was younger, I got a fair hand at what needs to be done. And at the bottom of Guildford Road, and as well as Shore Acres, if something isn't done, especially with a new addition with 35 proposed new homes coming, when all the water flows down to either side of Guildford Road, it bellies at Neely Road, has to be pushed back and pushed out into the canal. On the south side of Guildford Road, the exact same thing has to happen. It has to come down, it has to take a turn, it has to go down in Woodfield onto Birch, and then be pushed back out, which is absolutely inadequate for, especially with the growth. Everything flows from the top of Highway 11. We've had massive expansion on Guilford Road here all summer. They've stopped at the 20th side road. The elevation, if you shot them with a tripod from one culvert to the next, quite often it has to build 8 to 10 inches before it leaves from one yard to the next. If we get one of these flash floods, with already having problems in behind where I'm at on the EP protected area, I have maintained it myself, just keeping drainage out with a shovel and a little bit of elbow grease because there is a serious drainage problem in there. It really needs to be advised that there is a potential, as well as on Shore Acres, if we do get one of these floods we haven't had in 20-some years, we're going to have a lot of problems in Guilford. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Corbett. Other questions, comments? And if you, on the way home, go, oh, I should have asked this or I should have said that, you can write into the clerk's office or the town and provide your comments for, how long will the comment period be open, Mr. Scarrett or Mr. Cannon?
We haven't established a time frame from when we're going to
So at least a couple of weeks.
stop receiving comments. I don't suspect we'll be bringing anything back until the first quarter of New Year.
Okay, so you've got you know, a couple of weeks. If you think of something else that you want, that you forgot to say tonight. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, good evening. I'm Lena Leachuk. I'm at 1075 Guilford Road. This subdivision doesn't impact me as much as it does everyone else on Shore Acres and the east of 20th Side Road. But we do have the traffic flow coming off of Shore Acres Drive with the light up at 89 and Yonge Street. The backup, that's who's coming down Guilford Road, and they're coming down at extreme excessive speeds. And I'm just wondering if there is, in the future, on Yonge Street, if they're proposing to put in a right-hand turn lane at the light, or any turning lanes at the light to take care of some of the traffic backup coming north on Yonge Street. And the second thing I'd like to talk about is just inquiring whether there's going to be a four-way stop sign at Guilford Road and the 20th Side Road. Right now it's currently a two-way. There's a four-way at 20th and Shore Acres.
Thank you for those comments, and I can tell you that Yonge Street is controlled by the County of Simcoe, but that they are widening it to 4 lanes from Bradford all the way up to 89. Of course, it's phased in over many years, but they've been doing complete design and acquiring land. And yes, so I guess, sorry, short answer is yes. Sir.
Yeah, I just had one more thing to add. I'm a 5th-generation farmer, and I'm just wondering how this land and other lands in Innisfil in general go from being zoned agricultural to being allowed to have a subdivision on them. I mean, you know, I'm just kind of concerned with Guilford and basically all of Innisfil is surrounded with farmland. Is this going to be a trend going in the future where, you know, if a developer comes along, sees a piece of land, they decide that they want to develop on it? Is this, I don't know, I guess my question or concern is, you know, is agricultural land a priority for the town, and protecting it, is that a priority as well? Because, I mean, you know, obviously this land is located in a hamlet, but I'm just concerned with going forward in the future. As a farmer myself, just wondering, how easy is it for a large development company to come in and say, well, that looks like a good piece of land, I think we could put 30, 40 homes in there. You know, is this something that's going to be a growing trend around Innisfil, in between concessions and throughout the community? Thank you.
Thanks. Good question, Mr. Jakes. So I'm going to pass this off to our planning staff, but I'm going to start. All of those policies that you saw through Mr. Cannon's presentation, when it talked about the provincial policy statement, the town official plan, all of those are designed to keep development within settlement areas such as Guildford, such as Alcona, such as Cookstown or Churchill, and not have the sprawl in the more rural areas, and to protect our agricultural land. But I'll let our planning staff speak a little bit further on that.
Through your worship, you put it actually quite accurately. Our official plan has settlement areas, as you mentioned, Guildford, Alcona, Sandy Cove. We have population targets that we have to meet that are given to us by the province and the county. So our policies basically have to correspond and comply with the provincial policies that we're first with wrapping our policy around. Settlement area boundary expansions, oh, that's a whole nother beast. If we want to expand, I don't anticipate that Guildford would ever be a settlement area that would be something that we'd look to expand, because we typically, if we're looking to expand settlement areas, they would need to be on full municipal servicing. This area, Guildford, this community is a hamlet, has water, but it has no sanitary servicing, and there isn't any capacity in the system or any appetite to expand the sanitary servicing down to Guildford at this time. So we definitely wouldn't be looking at that community to expand, I don't believe. And it is, like I said, it's a beast to expand, to do an urban area expansion. You have to comply with the county population numbers that they've been given by the province. And you have to go through an extensive planning exercise to include outside lands into your urban settlement area. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments before we go to members of the council?
I'd like to talk about the quality of the road. Both Guildford Road and Shore Acres Road are not at the same quality as the road west of the 20th. They're bumpy. They're hard to drive on. Turning from the Guildford Road onto the 20th, you slow down because it's bumpy. Guildford Road at the 20th is a two-way stop. It's dangerous. They're coming off the highway at 80 or 90 kilometers. By the time they pass the 50, they're doing 70. And then they come to the small subdivision with residential parking on the road. We want to avoid this. We need to plan these driveways large enough to take 4 cars. They are just large enough to take 4 cars, but you have to move 2 before you get the other 2 moved. We need to plan for nice roads that don't rattle your teeth and break the eggs and are safe for fire engines, ambulances, and people. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Atkins. Other questions or comments?
Good evening. It's Ian Crispin. I'm at 1310 Guildford Road. My concerns are similar to everyone else's here. I would just like to note my concern for oversaturation due to the added septic systems on some people with wells in the area still. And if it does become a problem in the future of oversaturation with these added septic systems, I know you spoke to the sanitary hookup, but would it trigger a project for sanitary connections, which members of the town would have to be forced to hook up to those sanitary connections and decommission our sanitary system, or our septic systems. The second concern is, again, with the volume of new homes, the speed limits on Guildford Road and Shore Acres. I would love to see them reduced. I have small kids. There's nowhere for them to walk or play, just like the park issue, and people are flying up and down those roads. So it's a real concern for me daily that I see this, and that's all I have, so thank you.
Thank you. I can tell you that traffic speed and traffic safety is a systemic issue throughout the town of Innisfil. We do have a school zone and traffic safety committee who's working hard and meeting monthly with members of volunteer members of the community, trying to come up with different traffic calming measures and working with the police. So we're on that all the time. Other questions or comments on the application? I'll say one last time, any other comments or questions on the application? Seeing none, I'll go to members of council for questions and comments. I'll start with the ward councillor, Councillor Nickel.
Thank you, Worship. I do have a few pages here, so I don't know if you want to give me a break or let everybody else talk or not, but I fire off. I've already sent off stuff to staff from the concerns I've had. Obviously, tonight we're just receiving this application and nothing is being approved. Like we've heard already, I do as well have many questions that I would like to add to the record. And although staff have responded to many of them already this afternoon, and I don't require them to be answered tonight, I just wanted to put them on the books. Although this is a much better design, so that we wouldn't have existing residents looking at a 6-foot fence in the backyard on Shore Acres, my concern is too that it was 25 units a couple of years ago. I don't think just by adding town water, these homes now would be more appropriate or justifiable moving up to 35 homes. The previous design did have a loop for 2 entrances, but I wonder if the entrance couldn't be realigned with the golf course by moving lots 8 and 6, if this was to go through, to the newly proposed roadway to lessen the impact of the existing residents. Additionally, could there be a redesign to not only possibly maintain and preserve the strand of historic pines and use a roundabout or a parkette in that area? Would the proposed widening of the Shore Acres be on the south or the north side? If it was on the north side, obviously there'd be an impact to the existing roadway trees and their overgrowth, which work as somewhat as a traffic calming measure. The stormwater retention pond or management pond, I have a concern whether these would be the same engineers and developers who did the Enfield site. We're still dealing with water issues there, and the EP forest is still flooded. Would the proposed pond not likely be full as well, as there's not enough fall between this area and the lake, as you need 2 inches every 5 feet to make water run? I'm concerned with the overflow, the emergency overflow, which would just flood the 2-foot deep ditches that are on the south side of Shore Acres. In reading the report, obviously, I read that there's a swale along the south that's supposed to protect the residents that are on Guildford Road from flooding and to direct that drainage towards the EP land. I have concern about those that are already flooded to the east along with the health of that protected forest. Quite honestly, this summer I've already had to reach out to those that live on Lindy and Shore Acres east of Neely, as their backyards are still flooded all summer as well too, so we're just directing even more flow that way. Lake Simcoe Regional Conservation Authority has already identified that further studies would be required on the groundwater levels and obviously the impact of the EP lands. I just obviously will anticipate that we'll see that with the next report. I did wonder, looking at the justification here, I want to confirm that the only proposed grade change was shown at the far northwest corner. So again, with the lake being at 219 above sea level and Guildford already too flat for drainage, as Christina Holmes and Enfields have proven, I think that there's a real concern with that. Parkland. It's been referenced in the planner's justification for cash in lieu of parkland. In that report, golf course is not parkland. It's a private commercial business, and a stormwater retention pond is not a passive park. The protected forest is not accessible, and in fact is fenced off to all those that back onto it. Therefore, it's not a passive park either. Block 21 that's listed in here as parkland, but it's clearly a parking lot that is earmarked eventually for pumping stations some 20, 30, or 40 years away. So, is the western open space that's proposed here to remain a naturalized or a maintained and manicured park? I'm hearing that it's going to be just a naturalized area, obviously no park amenities. Just to make sure that if there was a park there, they would have access from Shore Acres. Obviously, as everybody's told today, Guildford is already parkland deficient. And this is a great opportunity to mitigate some of that by tweaking this design and scoping it back to possibly the 24 or so homes. Last one is my understanding that there are no usable Bell telephone lines left in the Guildford area. Is this a concern for the development going forward, or are we just forcing everybody to one provider? That's all I have.
Thank you, Councillor Nickel. Other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Davidson?
Thank you. Thank you, Worship. I concur with Councillor Nickel on many of the points that were brought forward regarding the parkland. I'm a believer that we do need more parkland in any particular area as we grow in Innisfil. Also, I believe very strongly that the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority should heavily look at the EA lands and how we can protect them more. I'm also a big believer in protecting our species in the neighborhood. As for the traffic study update, I'd like to see that update taken and be done on a weekend, and I'd like to see it be done during a prime weekend in the summer, say a long weekend, and maybe at the same time when we're doing the traffic study update, we can do the speeding at the same time with the, and I know that from the traffic committee, we have some new technology coming forward on catching speeders and that, but I'm gonna give you a heads up. Half the time when we catch the people who are speeding are the same people who are complaining about the speeding. It's usually your own neighbors that are speeding, and we can prove that. I'm just going through my notes here. Traffic control, design on the entrance. I think the one lady's offended about her lights. We have that issue on Big Bay Point for Friday Harbor when they're coming out of there affecting people. So Rob Nichols covered quite a bit. I'm hoping you sit on the Lake Simcoe Conservation, Alex Waters, so I think you can bring up those concerns. And when you talk about flooding, I didn't hear it mentioned from anybody. I know we used to deal with a 50-year flooding, but now we're concerned with the 100-year flooding. So let's put that as a priority. And I know when I was on the NVCA, that was our new number to look at the 100-year storm, because we've already had a few of them, and it's only going to get worse. So 100-year storm, improved traffic study for weekends in the summer, and more protection for our EA, and a piece of land with plat and nothing else is not a parkland. So I think that community needs something, and I think we need to show that we'll put something there. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Other questions, comments? Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few concerns, but a lot of them have already been raised. So my major one has to do with the Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority's comments on this development. In this report that I read, it said we hadn't received anything yet, but it sounds like we have received comments on this development. So my first question is, have we received those comments? Do we have them?
Mr. Cannon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Waters. I received comments from the Conservation Authority yesterday afternoon. I haven't really had to go through in detail. I haven't had an opportunity to dissect exactly what they are, but they've been provided to the applicant for them to address those comments and concerns. But they're pretty well detailed, and they deal with some of the concerns that we've heard this evening with regard to drainage and water balance and phosphorus offsetting and ecological offsetting as well. Thank you.
That's excellent, because I know the development that we dealt with on the 25th Terramie, the comments from the Lake Simcoe Conservation were really quite good. And so I look forward to reading those, because I think what we're going to find, as we find in Innisfil all the time, is that because we're such a low-lying community, and we're in short distance from Lake Simcoe, is that anything that we do has a great impact on Lake Simcoe. And we always talk about, Lake Simcoe protection plan, and here we have 35 homes going in with 35 new septic systems. And in a low-lying area, septic systems do not function. You're going to have high levels of phosphorus coming out of those septic systems, and they're not going to be working the way they should work. So I think personally, not a reflection of council, but I don't think we should be allowing any septic system, new septic systems. We should grandfather everything that's there now, and we should not allow any new septic systems in just because, for that reason. If we're really serious about Lake Simcoe and protecting it, we shouldn't be allowing these systems in, because we can have offsetting programs and everything else. It's just not the right thing to do. There are all sorts of other technical solutions to more portable wastewater treatment systems, which we've had presentations done in front of council. And I would think it would be a much better idea is to bring more modern ways of dealing with septic systems and dumping our waste into the ground and believing it's not going anywhere when it eventually ends up in Lake Simcoe. So I think we should take a serious look at, if we're really serious about Lake Simcoe and protecting it, we should not be allowing these septic systems in, especially in this type of dense manner.
Thank you.
A second question I have is in terms of the open space that's designated here, what does that mean in terms of what can people expect to see there? And will it be like that forever, or does the developer have an opportunity to change that over time?
I'll direct that question to Ms. Scotto.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To answer the question, the open space is not under the same environmental protection as the environmental protection, the EP lands, as those lands have a physical feature on them, either the creek or the woodlot. The open space lands are protected as they are potential floodplain lands, which means that because they are flood hazard, they cannot be developed. The intention from our perspective is to zone those as open space so that they cannot be developed for residential uses. And we will also be dedicating those lands to the municipality, and they will be placed in public ownership. So in terms of the use of those lands, once they are owned by the town, they can be used for passive recreational uses, but no development can take place in them in terms of structures, but certainly grass and benches and that type of thing.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Councillor? Any questions on this side? Councillor Orsatti.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just going on a couple comments, so I won't repeat any of those from previous council comments. Just in regards to these swales and drainage and sump pumps. So when we have high water table areas, sump pumps are sometimes they're running every single day, and sometimes in some homes, they're running 24 hours a day. So the concern is always, where do they pump out and who do they impact? So just wondering about, my concern is just looking at if the ground is raised, elevation is raised, just the concern of being aware of those homes that are on Guildford Road those new homes would back on, and swales may have an impact on there, as well as in the development from those on Concession Street to those backing on Shore Acres Drive. So that's one concern that I would have. Second is about the parking. Planned parking for these spaces, has it been determined how many vehicles per household, or is this the standard one for the town with planning of 1.5? Can anybody have an answer on, help me out with that one?
Ms. Scotto?
Thank you. So the proposed parking is that we are providing is consistent with the town's requirements. We're not proposing any variations to the town's bylaw requirements. That being said, in terms of the actual plan itself, the homes will have 2-car garages and then likely another 4 spaces in the driveway as well. So ample parking, and it is a full public street as well that we're proposing. So parking would be permitted within the street on the development as well.
Thank you. And is the driveways, are they planned to be beside each other with more spaces in between? Is there planning for on-street parking on Shore Acres Drive?
So there isn't, sorry if I could just jump on in. So there isn't planned additional parking on Shore Acres Drive. Just the internal road that we are proposing will be a public road, so public parking will be permitted. And I, forgive me, don't have the lotting plan in front of me that shows driveways, so I'm not too sure in terms of the location and whether or not they'll be side by side or separated on each lot.
Thank you. So just a comment from, looking at that, Shore Acres Drive is quite a busy road, a main arterial road, and main arterial roads have a lot of traffic. So, just one concern I would, like to look at later is how the driveways are laid out. If the town is allowing on-street parking on Shore Acres Drive, how that will be handled, because that road at the current width of it would not be able to handle that. And then also, if there's future plans for a multi-use trail that's to be included in there with a bicycle route that impacts parking, again, I'd like to see that in consideration of this development to know the future forecast. Thank you.
Thank you. A lot of those questions, I'm sure that town staff will be comparing what the applicant is proposing based on our trails master plan, our transportation master plan, and all those other plans, and they would have to conform with the plans that we have in place and that council has approved. Other questions or comments from council? Councillor Waters?
Just another quick question concerning the comments from Lake Simcoe Conservation Authority. Are they available for the public to see, and will they be included on our website with links so people can see what they've had to say?
Mr. Cannon?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Waters, absolutely I can put those comments on the website and make them available to the public. If everybody needs access to that, it's on our Get Involved Innisfil.ca website, and it's easy to navigate down to the bottom of the page on the right-hand side, click on Planning Applications, and just scroll down to 1291 Shore Acres Drive, and all the information that I listed on the slide is in there, along with additional information as I get it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions of council? Any more questions? Seeing none. If you've not made oral or written submissions in regards to this proposal before a decision is reached, you should be aware that the local planning appeal tribunal may dismiss your appeal. That is, what that means is if you're silent at this stage of the game, and then council considers the application and approves it, you may have lost your right to appeal. But if you've made written or oral submissions, which many of you had, then that right to appeal would remain. But of course, you don't have to worry about that until after it comes back to council, and we think probably sometime late Q1. So anyone wishing to be contacted before the application is further considered by council, please fill it in the notification form located by the entrance of the council chambers. I want to take a moment to thank everybody for their wonderful participation and their complete attention, and for helping us work through this process together. And thank you for all of your thoughtful comments. Council will now consider a recommendation to receive the report. 4.1. So the recommendation ahead of us is simply to be received, and that the comments presented at the public meeting be addressed by Planning Services in a comprehensive report outlining recommendations and options at a future council meeting, which you will know about if you sign the thing on the way out. So, and that would be moved by Councillor Nicol and seconded by Councillor Waters. Any other final comments or questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? That's carried. And our confirming bylaw, it's confirmed, moved by Councillor Fowler and seconded by Councillor Rosati. All those in favor? That's carried. And adjournment, moved by Councillor Ices, seconded by Councillor Payne. All those in favor? That is carried. Thanks again very much for being here with us tonight. Please come to another council meeting. They're lots of fun. This is quite improper because we've already adjourned, but Councillor Rosati just reminded me, all of those that you are worried about traffic safety and traffic calming, there's a meeting at the Lakeshore Library on Tuesday evening next week between 5 and 8. It's a drop-in. If you've got questions or comments about, please come forward to that meeting and talk about your traffic issues. Thank you.